Hey guys, Jordan Needham, Jham 3D. Thank you guys for tuning in. This video is a little bit long and I don't want to interrupt it too much, but I will be popping in and out for voiceovers just to kind of explain what I'm doing, where my thought process was for a lot of these things, and also to really just help you guys out. Like what would I do better next time? What should I do better next time? And some tips and advice if you were to make something along the lines of what I did or a project of this size. I really tried to do most of the work in this project myself, and that was a lot of labor. So I tried to condense this as much as I could. It was over 20 hours of screen recorded footage and over 30 hours of work. So I hope that the duration of this video is not too long. And if you have any questions about my workflow during this video, please let me know in the comments below. This is not a tutorial, but I will absolutely do my best to answer your questions. So now let's sit back, hopefully enjoy the music and enjoy the video. topology on this piece was pretty awful. However, I was using a reference image where I really liked this part of the tower, and I wasn't really sure how to go about modeling this, but for being so crappy, it actually did work out pretty well. You slapped a subsurf on there and it looked fine. If I were to separate this piece from the cylinder, it would look absolutely awful. I was just lucky enough to be able to keep that part hidden, and so we were good. So right here, the reason that I delete the base was to simplify the topology. I knew I was going to be using a Boolean modifier, and that can get kind of hectic sometimes. And all I had to do was just add in a new cube and then merge the top vertices with the other pieces of this. So it really wasn't hard at all, and I think it was the right move. So this next model proved to be a problem in a number of different ways. It was one of the most consistent reoccurring challenges that I had to face during this project. I wouldn't say it was the most difficult though. Essentially, I needed to array these separate objects all together, and I wasn't really sure how I should do that. Should I use geometry nodes? Should I use planes and an instance on those? Or what should I do? So I tried everything, and ultimately the good old array modifier came in clutch, but I had to join every object and of course apply the modifiers on those objects before I joined them, which I didn't want to do because it would slow down the viewport, because I had to subsurf on one of these next models that I'll create in a second here, these leaves. But it ended up being not much of an issue as long as I kept the array modifier disabled in viewport. But I think if I had more time, I would have set up some sort of geometry node setup that would have allowed me to array these precisely the way I wanted to. I was able to get a setup going, but it wasn't really the way I wanted it to go, and it was just quicker to go the old-fashioned route, so I did that. Throughout this video, you'll see me search for the fastest way to do something. A lot of times I will attempt that, and it doesn't end up being as efficient as I hope, so it takes a while to set it up for whatever reason, right? So a little tip for anyone out there is, sometimes you get so obsessed with what's the fastest, most efficient way to do something, and I think it's good to have that mindset for the most part, but sometimes it takes you longer to continue looking for the fastest way than if you just do it the good old-fashioned way and find a way to do it, get it done. Maybe it's not the best way, but done is better than just scrambling. So right here I had to array these leaves in a circle, and I ended up just using a mirror modifier, duplicating these leaves, and placed a cursor in the center of that sphere and just started duplicating, rotating until I had a full circle of leaves. And then I joined all of those leaves together after applying the mirror modifiers, and ended up with another object right here, completely just one collection of leaves. Then I used an array modifier, which I arrayed via a empty, and used that to descale an array at the same time. can see I set up a geometry node set up for these towers here to kind of put it on a perfect cube, but I really should have just used a mirror modifier on those. And then you can see on the pillar walls, I also have a geometry node set up, which I did inform you that I ended up deleting because it was easier to just use an array modifier, and particularly because it became a pain when I went to change materials. You couldn't really select the material as easily. You couldn't select the object as easily because it's an instanced object. Also, the main thing was it was just really not as easy to move around. So I didn't want to set that all up. I should have just used an array modifier from the start. So I think my conclusion here is that geometry nodes are not really useful at just small scales. And what I mean by that is if you're only replicating something 4 times, it's probably best to try to use a mirror modifier, array modifier, or something simple. But if you're doing a massive scene, like I needed 4,000 of these towers somewhat randomly distributed throughout a massive scene, obviously geometry nodes are the way to go. Since I knew that I was going to be using so many of these top pieces, I tried to keep as much of their data linked as I possibly could, and also try to take advantage of using an array modifier and even other ways of instancing these, just so I could keep it simplified, and whenever I had to make edits, I didn't have to go to each and every individual one. Saved a lot of time. So now we're moving on to the front yard, the landscaping, and I think I should have spent a little more time on this. However, I haven't really done a lot of yards or landscape in my 3D history, so this was a little bit new to me. I wasn't sure exactly what to do. So what I did is I started out by just using the curve draw tool to kind of block out what I think would look cool, using some reference along the way. And ultimately, I think it turned out a little more empty than I would have liked it to be in the end. But for a first try, I can't be too upset, and I think now I know what to do moving forward. I did do a lot of UV unwrapping, but I ended up not needing most of it, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip through this. finally moving on to texturing, which is always hard for me to hold back on because it's always so cool watching something go to plain white to, you know, more detailed and textured, colored. It's really satisfying. Now, I did download and find some fitting PBR textures from online, and that ultimately just gave me a feel, a vision for what I want this to look like. But once I was edging closer to the end, I did end up making most of the materials myself. And if you have the time, I do recommend making your own materials because then you have total control over them. There's great resources online, but so many times you get good, not great, or almost perfect even, which is even more annoying at times. You get almost perfect materials, but you have to change it anyways, and it's not quite there. So designing them yourself can be really fun and very useful. I suppose I forgot to press record once, or I don't know what happened, but I didn't record the creation of this cobblestone path that I ended up making, but there is a tutorial online. If you look up geometry node cobblestone path, you should be able to find it. I went off of that tutorial, and then I kind of customized it a little bit more too, and had to end up making my own materials. But this thing was really cool, and I'll definitely be making some more paths like this in the future using geometry nodes. It was awesome. So once I got some basic lighting set up with some HDRIs and some camera angles, I went ahead and started doing some render testing. Now, a lot of YouTubers don't include the render testing portion of their edits in their videos because it's kind of boring. However, I think you can learn a ton from doing this, and it's crucial in my opinion. Basically, you take advantage of every render slot you can, try to render things out using different lighting, see what isn't looking right, see what is definitely wrong. Like for instance, I had to descale this fountain because it was comically large, so I used a guy for some scale reference and got it down to something more viable. So generally you want to start out by using sort of a lower resolution, lower sample count so it can render fast, and you can get the most obvious errors or things that are throwing your eyes off fixed quickly. But as you get more detailed and you have to really correct the fine detail of what is throwing off the photorealism, what doesn't look right on the eye, what are the little things about this that I don't like, that's when you have to start using a higher resolution, higher sample count render. So what I would do is I'd do those lower sample counts throughout the day, and once I was done for the day, I would render out one large one, and I would save that on my phone and kind of look at it periodically so that I would know what to fix the next day coming into this project. Now, when I was a beginner, I would always want to rush through the render testing phase, but I highly encourage you not to do that. I don't know if anyone else feels like doing that. I was just so ambitious on finishing the project, but just get this through your head. It is not done. Just because you hit render and you got the image doesn't mean it's done. There's still work to do if it's your first render, and that might be obvious to most people, but to me it was like, I just want to get done. Like, man, I put all this work in. No. Do the testing, put in the work, make sure you get that fine eye detail in there. I never did get a perfect rock texture. I didn't really want to spend that much time on this because it wasn't a core of the project, but I did feel like it was way too simple, so I tried to add some variation by adding mold or moss on top of the rock a little bit, just to make it look like it's, you know, it's been in the ground for a while. It's been getting that, you know, shower from the sprinklers for a fat minute now, so maybe it's got some mold growing out. I don't know, some moss, some bacterial, I don't know, but it did end up maybe adding slightly more detail. And I also wanted to make the bottom of it look slightly damp, but I don't think it came through in the render. So that's what this is. So photorealistically, the most difficult task of this project was getting the white plaster or concrete to look something other than plain white. And that was, I was battling that over a series of test renders, and it just didn't sit well with me. I've had projects in the past where it just looks whitewashed, it looks really bland, and it looks too much like a 3D render. I wasn't going for full photorealism, but I also wasn't going for that, you know, 2003 PlayStation look. So I did end up ditching a lot of that UV unwrapping work and kind of ditching the PBRs that I picked up, created my own texture, and used a lot of projection mapping, and I think it actually worked pretty well. Once this material was done, it was just a matter of making some few extra tweaks and then color correcting, framing, picking some good angles again, and really just making out the final render. So this is the last you're going to hear from me in this video. I'm going to let the music play out and you're going to see the final results in just a little bit. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you learned anything, or you just appreciate it, please consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. And I will catch you next time.